everybody. What is up? We are live with Clint Sears. He is a screenwriter for TV, film, and immersive theater. You guys might have recognized him. We've watched a lot of his films. We watched St. Agatha recently, and he also did the Tales of the Halloween, which we actually watched. How are you doing, Clint?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I've been
Thanks.
wanting to have you on here for a while. I think since we talked to Darren, just because you seem so interesting. Um,
That's the first time anyone has ever said that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
no, you're so funny and stuff, and seeing your writing and seeing other things you've done, it seems crazy, and I just want to know how your brain works a little bit. And if chat has any questions, remember just put it in the chat, the questions room, and I will get to it. But first of all, can you tell us a little bit how you got into writing?
Sure. Basically, it was kind of a weird thing. I always wanted to get into film, and I wanted to be a director and writer, and I've always loved movies and TV and everything. And I went there I went sideways. My buddy Darren, my best friend, we used to make movies together and everything. Darren Bousman, who did Saw, and he's doing Saw 19 now and everything. And then he went to film school where I wound up in advertising, and I was doing copywriting. He kind of blew up, and all of a sudden I had this idea for a film. I kept telling Darren over and over, and then I just kind of started to work on it, and I gave it to him, and then people got interested, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I can have ideas for film, and I kind of let that go. And as we worked on it more and more, I was like, oh, I think I can actually screenwrite because I copyright all the time. And I realized it was kind of the same discipline of basically just, getting to the point as quick as you can in the most interesting way. And that's how I wound up in what I do now, I guess. So
That's crazy though too that you could be so good at it and just wind up there.
well, the way to break into the film industry is to just become best friends with somebody who already has 3 number one movies. And it's really easy after that. I'm just kidding.
No, it was so good too, especially I'm not sure. So theater macabre that I went through, that's your is that your third time writing for that sort of thing, immersive theater?
Yeah, I think that was the third time out, and then we've done some private things too. But yeah, that was the third big one.
What was doing that compared to writing for a movie script? Because that just seems so intricate. You had to write lines, but then you had to anticipate what audience members would say, and I guess write lines for that as well.
Correct. And the hard thing with the immersive thing, and I didn't know how the heck to do it at first either. I was like, I have no idea what to do. How do you basically I'm familiar with improv and I understand the improv background and everything. And I was like, how do you guide this in a way that's interesting? And finally, once I realized that you could just make it honestly really close to a movie script, except for you have channels and paths that go off. And all you have to do is make sure that how many variables you put in, all right, if Chelsea's going to do this, or she says yes to this, or she says no to this, I either have to make it come back to the same path that's interesting, or I have to make both of those things interesting. So it's really kind of challenging and fun though, because as a screenwriter, you always get notes, and everybody, the producers, the director, everybody has their own ideas about what is good and what should happen. And so you're constantly rewriting anyways. So you kind of just have to rewrite yourself, and your decisions become the notes, and you always want to make the notes as good as they possibly can and make the writing better every time you change it. So it's just having a bunch of variables and still trying to keep an interesting beginning, middle, and end, or a big payoff. And I don't know, it's a lot of fun, but it's basically writing 50 screenplays versus just one.
Wow.
And that's, yeah,
How long does it
all
take
around
you
the
to
same.
write that?
Forever. It takes a really long time. The only good thing is that so often I don't have time to think about it, and so I just have to crank it out.
Yeah.
And so it's actually been a really good boot camp for my writing in general. That's hopefully made it better. Just knowing that there's no time off. I can't be sick. I can't be bothered. I can't play video games. I just have to keep working no matter what happens, because people are going to be turning in their tickets that they bought. Actors are in costumes. There's no pushing a live event like you can film or TV or anything.
The actors have to say words at some point.
And the date is already set.
Oh my gosh. gosh. How do you find your inspiration to write for certain projects? Is it like the director coming to you? Is it stuff that you make on your own?
So both. It depends on what the project is, but if it's stuff that I make on my own, it's just I'll keep like a journal basically, and every time I get an idea of something that interests me, I'll just kind of throw it in there. Or I'm always trying to stay open to new ideas or new things that are interesting. And the fun thing about writing is if you're interested in something, you're actually working when you're learning more about it. So I always try and stay curious, and I've always been a curious person. So on that side, that's pretty fun. So like everything that you're interested in can become a nugget or a kernel for, something new, a new project something that you can bring to the new project. But as far as other people's projects, it depends. It can be easier or harder depending on how much personal investment you have in it. But at the end of the day, I think I'm able to find most things interesting. So even if I'm not initially as curious as I want to be about a project or a theme, usually I can find some way to work myself into it or work the things that I find interesting about it into it. And I think that's the key to you have to be interested in yourself or no one else is going to be. So
Yeah, you have to work for yourself because no one's going to work as hard for you as
yeah,
you.
pretty much.
Ender
And
wants to know how did the idea of St. Agatha come up?
that's a very good that's a very good example. So I had never really thought that I wanted to do like a nun exploitation movie, and that was actually something that came to me. And these producers had financing for a nunsploitation movie, and if you guys don't know what that is, that's usually nunsploitation comes from the 70s, and there was something that happened where they made like these really gory, violent movies all around demented nuns that would do horrible things to people. And so I kind of, and I don't know that Darren did either. We kind of didn't really have an interest in doing that. We wanted to do more of a cerebral thriller out of it. And so they had a nunsploitation script, and they brought it to us. And so we turned that into what St. Agatha wound up being. And that was, again, finding the interest in that story. I think everyone would agree it's probably night and day difference between what it was originally and what I wound up writing. Like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this in the 1950s because that automatically is a little more interesting, and it helps with a horror movie to have things in the past, because this is literally the bane of this is literally the bane of every horror movie now.
Yeah.
Because no one can be vulnerable when you have help and the internet 5 seconds away. So we put in the 50s, and I just did a lot of character work and tried to make characters that were interesting. And once that happened, I was like, okay, now I'm curious about this and how we can make this fun and kind of something that we want to get 90 minutes out of.
Because as a cute dog, it is the bane of horror movies. Oh my gosh. It is a cute doggo, though. You must
Thank
admit.
you. That's Benny.
Oh my gosh. It's so adorable. No, I think, like, we all really enjoyed the movie. It was really fun. It was really crazy.
Good.
Yeah, it was really fun. And do you like writing comedy or horror more? Because I noticed in the Halloween Tales one, your short was, like, a comedy horror.
It's funny because especially with Peele doing Get Out and everything, and then Chris Rock now doing the Saw movies, I really don't think there's that much difference between the setup to a good joke and a good scare. And so, honestly, when I first started, I originally enjoyed writing comedy more, and then found that horror was an easy transition. And so, I like both. I think I like both, and it's funny to say that because right now I'm writing a couple comedy skits, and the next immersive project that I'm going to be working with is pure comedy, and I think that'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
PK wants to know if you could partner with any immersive company to create a collaboration. Who would it be?
Anyone with lots and lots and lots of money. No. No, I think we're really excited to like work with more brands and products like that, and just seeing how we can make existing properties interactive, live and in person. So I'm happy to work with anyone. My buddy Larry Myers actually is the one that's doing the next immersive project, and he is really funny, and he's got an interesting way of thinking, and that one, like I said, will be pure comedy. So
That sounds so cool. Is that hard though too? Cause do you get to see your location before you write? Does that help you, or can you write and like make up the location? Because like immersive, it has to be a set location. I
right,
suspect because you can't like build these sets like you really could for a movie.
correct. And it's with the first one that we did, we had just so much money that we were able to take a warehouse, see what was in the warehouse, and it was a little bit more of a blank canvas. So for the tension experience, I got to basically write and then create the rooms behind it. But for other stuff, exactly like you said, sometimes you really do have to write to location. And so I think all of writing for like whether it's TV or movie or all basically like screenwriting is basically solving problems. And so when you have these set locations, like you can't tear down a wall or you can't say, suddenly this empty bank is going to be a hospital. It just won't translate. It's all about solving problems. So you have a general idea of where you want to go, but then you have to use all the tools to solve that problem. So if that answers your question, yes, you absolutely have to write to the locations most of the time. But I just consider it like anything else, like another note, like all of a sudden this character is going to become a woman. And they're like, okay, well, now I have to transition that. But it'll be instead of the blah, blah, blah set that we wanted for the immersive experience, we're going to actually have to use this warehouse. And that doesn't have a staircase. So now you're going to have to rewrite that thing. So it's just constantly shifting and not staying too strict to anything. Like I don't hold anything precious anymore. It can all be thrown away completely.
Yeah, so let
There's
go.
all yeah. I have to let go constantly.
Oh my gosh. What is it like seeing something you wrote come to life?
It's literally the best thing ever.
Oh.
It's so awesome. I remember for Tales of Halloween, I had the idea in my head and I was like, there's no way that it'll match what it's in my head. And every time I saw it, it was even better.
Oh.
And like I said, I've always loved TV and movies and like just watching things that are just a like spark of your imagination and like hundreds of people all like rushing to put it together and make it the best it can be.
Yeah.
It's like feeling like a little kid and finding out that magic is real basically, and it's the biggest buzz, and I just keep chasing it every time. It's like a drug. I'm like, oh.
That's so cute because I imagine how people are like they read a book and they want to see the movie made of it because like
Yeah,
it's what's in their mind and that's all in your
like
mind and you created it and like you're
yeah,
literally seeing it like magically come to life. That's so cute.
it's amazing.
So do you go through your immersive experiences then?
I do. Yeah, I test them and I have to make sure that they work. And so what's fun is a lot of times I'll come out late and people don't know that I'm the writer. And so it's really fun to go through and no one knows who I am. And I like it that way, honestly, because that's the most raw and honest way to experience it. And that was even weirdly more surreal than watching a movie because well, you've done immersive experiences, like it feels tangible and almost like real life when you're doing it. And to have something that was in my head not only feel like a movie, but to feel like real life. And like I was emotionally reacting to live people in front of me for stuff that I had written. That one was like living a dream. That's what it felt like where you have that little hint of like, oh, this seems kind of familiar. It was it was a trip. That's all I can say.
That's adorable. Oh my gosh. Downgrade Gamer wants to know if you could work with any director you wanted to, who would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. I love really unabashedly like entertaining commercial stuff. I would love to work with like Joss Whedon is amazing. I grew up on Buffy. That was like one of my favorites. J.J. Abrams is awesome. All those guys in those vein. Who's the guy that did Thor Ragnarok and he does We Live in Shadows? I can't think of his name. He's so funny. I can't think of his name, but a New Zealand director who's always entertaining and hilarious.
Uh,
We'll have to Google it, but yeah.
Got put on your dream board. You'll get there one day.
Yes.
You got this.
Secret board. Thank you.
No, you also love cooking. You guys have to follow him on Instagram because it's literally just all posts of food and dogs, and like I don't know how you get a better feed to be honest.
Thank
How'd you get into cooking? And also, I think because since it's Taika Waititi. I don't know how to say that name.
Yeah, good luck. Here, you want me to butcher it?
Yeah,
I'll try.
you butcher it, because last time I butchered like Theater Macabre and Darren's name, and I can't live it down.
I keep seeing that on Twitter. What did you call it?
Theater
Macabre?
Macabre.
Macabre?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll have to make sure the next one is hard to pronounce as well.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm not even going to try that either.
It's a trap.
No,
it's a trap.
it totally is.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so what was your question? I'm sorry.
How'd you get into cooking?
Oh, I broke my neck.
Oh my God. That's great.
How's that for an answer?
Yeah.
No, and that's actually how I became friends with Darren too, so we can pull both those together. But in the 7th grade, I've always been a swimmer. I was always a swimmer all my life, and in the 7th grade, I was trying to impress the older girls on the swim team because some of the like older teenagers were doing this thing called a sailor dive. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
You dive without your hands, and so like it's the dumbest thing in the world.
Oh my God.
And I did it. They were doing it off a starting block, and I did it, and I'm like, hey, I'm doing it. And then I hit the bottom of the pool and cracked my head. And
Oh my gosh.
I was fine, no paralysis or anything, but I had to wear a brace like all summer, and I was so afraid to go outside. You know, middle school kids are super tolerant to anything that's like outside the norm and totally forgiving. No, they were horrible. So I was like, there's no way I'm letting anybody see me in this. So I had this big geeky neck brace, and it's not geeky. There's nothing wrong with it, but the kids were relentless, so I didn't want to give them any ammo. So I stayed inside for like, an entire summer, and me and Darren just played video games and nerded out and geeked out the entire time, and that's how we became friends. But the other reason is I couldn't go to gym class in the 8th grade, so I wound up taking sewing, typing, and like home ec because I literally had a doctor's notes that I couldn't go to gym, and I wound up loving it, and I still do.
Yeah, and I got good life skills. You're eating good every day. I see that as a win.
Yep.
Yeah.
The sewing hasn't kept up as much, but the typing was definitely a big help.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. I love that story. Just how do you do anything? Break your neck. That's how I got my entire career started.
So 2 big takeaways for everybody at home that like wants any sort of this path at all of Hollywood is to break your neck and then become friends with somebody who's super successful.
There you go. Let's stick with the second one maybe a little more. Don't go down that first route as much.
All right, fine.
Oh my goodness. What is your favorite thing to cook, or that you have cooked?
That's a good question. I love barbecue, and I'm from Kansas City originally, and I absolutely love barbecue. So I love smoking barbecue and like trying to find new and interesting ways to make barbecue.
That's so interesting. So are you a big meat lover then?
Yes, I am. Okay. Definitely.
I forget what it was, but you went on like
I don't want to do that.
And you like found it in a paper. It was like the best food, like the best. I don't know if it was like chicken or waffles, or chicken and waffles, or some sort of food, and you actually found it in some city while you were visiting.
That was the weirdest thing. Yeah, I read about it in a magazine, and then I accidentally wound up at the restaurant. Like I was flying, and I had like one of my food and wine magazine, one of the food magazines, and I was like reading it just out of boredom. I was like, wow, this place in DC sounds awesome. And I wound up in the sister restaurant of that guy eating the signature dish. And I didn't realize until I was finished that that's actually what happened. And I felt like an idiot, but also like a very special little food boy.
Wow, that's amazing. I did that the other day. I was looking up it wasn't exactly the same thing, but I was looking up the best food in this area.
Right.
And like the first restaurant pops up. Like I was walking, and then I look over to my left, and it's sitting right there.
It feels like, yeah,
like,
it was meant to be.
Magic.
What was the food?
It was an empanada restaurant.
Nice. I love empanadas. Were they awesome?
Yeah, they were so good. They had like vegetarian ones, and they were amazing.
I want to be a vegetarian. I love animals so much, and I don't know. It's one of those things I feel guilty about every day.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's just the taste for me. I don't like the taste of like the smoked, like the smoked barbecue, or like the brisket.
Oh yeah.
I don't like that smoky taste, or like
There's
just like cooked meat.
There's a lot of people that are like that.
Yeah, it's a hard knock life.
I don't blame you.
And can you talk just like a little bit about your dogs, because we saw on your phone they're adorable, and we would like to know more about the cute fluffy animals.
Let's see. there's Lindsay and our two boys.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then there's Charlie. And then there's Benny.
Oh, they're so
Benny
cute.
just makes me laugh. And there they are. I can't. There they are wrestling each other.
That's adorable.
So yeah, I love the small dogs, and yeah, I'm a big fan of the Shih Tzus too.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
my entire Instagram is just all dogs, and it's like my digital Prozac. That is a real life tip that I have for everyone is follow lots of dogs on Instagram.
That is so cute. And is that basically, do you have your dream dog now?
Oh, they're both my dream dogs. I mean, what do you mean? Yeah, of course, right? Like,
Yeah.
and even if they weren't, I wouldn't be able to say that. You can't. That's like, it's like asking a mother, like, would you rather have a different child? You can't answer. No, they're both my dogs.
Oh, did you have dogs when you were younger?
I did, yeah, and they've always been small. I'm not a big dog guy. Like, I love them, and I wouldn't mind one, but I've always had little tiny dogs.
Oh, that's so cute. We have a couple things. My chat room isn't refreshing, but a couple more questions if you're fine with that.
Yes.
So my favorite thing to know from people in the industry is like, what is your favorite movie?
Oh God, I'm so bad at these, and I have a horrible memory. I'm so sorry. My favorite movie when I was a kid, I know for sure, was The Labyrinth. Have you ever seen that?
No, I've been needing to see that. Yeah.
I think it holds up pretty good, but I watched that a million times. That I couldn't ever stop watching that. And as far as like, I also loved The Wizard of Oz as a kid. I just loved the spectacle of it, and that it would go from black and white to color. Um, my favorite comedy is probably Bottle Rocket. That's like Wes Anderson's first movie. I don't know that a lot of. Oh, you know? Oh,
I love
perfect.
Wes Anderson.
Yes. Oh, great. Perfect. Yeah, I do too. He's amazing, isn't he?
Yeah, he's one of my favorite directors. It's just
Me too.
so quirky.
I know. Is that a good enough answer for now?
No, it's an amazing answer. Like,
Okay.
it's whatever you want it to be. You could say Frozen, and it's still great because it's your favorite film.
I've tried to watch Frozen twice now, and I because I work so much and it's terrible. I fall asleep at movies all the time, and there's nothing wrong with Frozen, but I just, for whatever reason, I can't get to the end of it. Those catchy songs come on, and I'm out like a light.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, that works as well. Serves a purpose, at least.
Yeah, and I love British TV as well, but for some reason we finally figured out that the British accents also make me sleepy, which makes no sense.
Oh my gosh, that's an amazing answer. We have a question from P. Kayla real quick. Writing for immersive theater requires a much more nuanced approach, especially with branching paths. What is your process when writing an experience from start to finish?
Oh, that's a really good question. So writers have like different methods, and my favorite method is I'll start out and I'll just like write notes. And so I'll think of notes of anytime something, I'll just kind of like put it on the back burner. I'll be like, okay, this is a new project. And I'll just kind of like, all right, I'm going to consciously kind of think about this every once in a while, go through my day. And usually it's when I don't have time to write something down, it'll be I'm driving or something like that, or in the middle of a important meeting with some other project. And I'll get these ideas. So I just jot down notes, and then I'll have like a long, like jokingly, like you call the dream board. I'm like, here's all my collage of different ideas. And then I'll outline everything, and I'll make sure that the outline works. And then from that, I really like a good detailed outline. And this is just my process, by the way. There's no right or wrong way to do any of this. This is just what I do. And then from that outline, it's like a roadmap. And I'll often deviate once I start writing, because I stay pretty close to it. But once you start writing it, it's like you really start to flesh out the world in your mind, and you'll get sparked for like new things to do and new and exciting ways to do it. And so it's good too, because if I start sparking too much, then I can spiral out. But I always have the outline to go back to. I'm like, okay, well, I know I need to get to this beat and this landmark at least here. And so even if I go completely sideways from where I thought I was going to go, I'll just be like, all right, I still have my map to know that I need to end up here. And for me personally, that's a great way to work. And I recommend it to anyone, because can I keep going? I do have, okay. Like the one thing, and the reason why I started a little bit later than I wanted to, and probably got into copyright and advertising was because I absolutely hate writing. And most writers that I know will tell you that behind the scenes. They'll be like, yeah, writing is terrible. It's a horrible, vulnerable, like crushing process. And let me take that back. If you're writing just for fun and you know no one's going to read it, then yeah, it can flow forever. But the second that you know, like you're going to enter a contest or that you're going to show it to your best friend or even turn it in for a grade or, a real project, the second that that happens, I don't care who you are, you're going to get pressure on yourself that like, this writing is who I am. And we all have egos. And so unless you're completely zen, you're going to be like, well, what if it's bad and people think that I'm bad? And it's not like other things where it's like, there are other creative endeavors that, you can do and it doesn't mean quite as much. But for this, it really tends to feel really personal because you're asking somebody to go on a journey that you completely made up. And so you're always going to second guess and you're going to have like that little block and that little like, oh, I got to keep going. And what stinks about that is I heard people say, if you don't love writing, you're not a writer. And I'm just here to say like that's absolutely not true. That just don't listen to that. Like some people do. Some people get up every day and they're like, oh, I can't wait to put my thoughts on paper and write away. But for a lot of people I know, it's like a very like hard process that is really hard to do and it isn't often fun when you get started. And some projects are fun to write and some, are easier than others and some you really enjoy and some are just painful the entire way through. But it always feels good once you're done, and it's important to remember that. And it's also important to remember, like, no matter what you're doing, it doesn't really matter. That's not who you are. It's not as personal as you think it is, and you care way more about it than anyone else does. And like that's a little bit freeing to remember. And also that no one knows anything. Like we're all making it up as we go along. There's no right way to do anything.
Yeah.
So if you want to write but you're having a hard time, that just means you're a writer and you should keep going and just do it. And it doesn't matter. That's my advice.
That's amazing. This is a beautiful inspirational speech. No, and I think it's like really true to what you're saying. People are just like too much like, what are other people gonna think? Besides, like, what is your story? What do you want to tell? But not everyone's gonna like what you do all the time. Like you can't control everyone.
And I have a little trick for that too. Is like think of your favorite thing in the world, like your favorite piece of like art or work or whatever, and someone out there is calling it crap. Like it doesn't matter. Like people are like The Walking Dead. Like there's people out there that, God forbid, they probably have brain damage or are completely insane. But there's some people that don't like The Walking Dead, and that's crazy. We all know it's crazy, but they're out there. So like the other thing is think of the worst thing in the world that you absolutely hate, and where you're like, how is that on TV or how is that a movie? You're probably at least going to be better than that in your own mind. So again, it doesn't matter. Just write for yourself. Try and make yourself happy. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be. That's the other trap people fall into is they want to just keep working on things until they're perfect, and that's absolutely impossible. Set a deadline for yourself and write it and do it.
That's a good idea. We all need to gather.
That was probably so far away from anything close to the original question.
No, I think it was perfect. It was because you did that and you elaborated on it, and we all feel more inspired in life. Because it doesn't apply to writing; it applies to anything really that you're doing.
I agree, and I think that everyone should just do whatever they want to do, and I don't think that there's anybody out there that's just born to do something. If you want to do it, just start doing it and get better at it, and go for it.
No, thank you. It was really good words of encouragement. And we're like a little over time, but I have two like silly questions, are really fast and easy to answer if you don't mind. You mentioned video games, so we want to know like what is your favorite video game?
Oh man, I have a ton. I've played video games all my life. Again, I'm so bad at these. I'm playing The Witcher right now, which is really fun. Have you ever played that?
I've heard of it. I haven't played it, but I've heard of that one.
It's probably not fun to stream because it's like a role-playing game that takes forever. I love the last Uncharted. I think I saw on your Twitter that you were playing that, right?
Yeah, I'm almost done with Uncharted. I'm actually gonna finish Uncharted 2 tonight.
Oh, okay. Wait. Oh, so you're going through the whole series?
Yeah.
Oh, so you don't know that like everyone dies in a horrible. Oh.
I mean, like everyone except Elena, right?
No, I'm just kidding. No, I love the Uncharted series, and what's so
Yeah.
fun about that is like to me they feel like the closest thing to like a movie. Personally, like it feels like
Yeah.
you're playing a movie, and I love how like they always like keep the action fast and they jump from place to place. The last one made me cry like a baby. You're gonna bawl.
Oh no.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, I'm literally crying so hard at the ending of this thing. And it's
I'm
not
so
because
scared.
it's good or because it's bad. It's just it really was like
Emotional.
touching in a way that I didn't expect. Yeah.
I'm so scared. I'm so
So
scared.
yeah, there's not many video games that I don't like. I like them a lot. I like them too much because I always want to play, and I got to work.
No, that's great. Everyone here can respect that. And last question is, if you can bring one superhero with you into the zombie apocalypse, who would it be? I asked every guest this. Darren had to answer it. Everyone has to answer it. You have to answer it.
I'm not writing. Okay, give it to me again.
If you could bring one superhero with you into the zombie apocalypse, who would it be? So who would be your sidekick in the zombie apocalypse?
All right, this is a very good question. I appreciate it. And
We ask some hard questions here, Clint. It's important
I
stuff.
know. The zombie apocalypse. Okay, so that's important, right?
Mm.
See, my favorite superhero is Batman, but I feel like Bruce Wayne would not do well in like a place where everybody's basically homeless. So he would be upset because he's a rich playboy. I guess you got to go. It's a boring answer, but I think I have to go Superman. That's what sucks about Superman. You can use him for everything, right? He's that powerful.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I guess Superman. What's your answer?
Good answer. Mine's Doctor Strange because he controls
Yeah.
like time. He can open his portals and you guys can just go from place to place, or you can just push the zombies into another portal, or you can turn back time, and like we can maybe like fix things. But yeah.
That's a good answer. That's a good
And
answer.
also he can tell the future and things. So he would know, he'd have more insight. And he can play out all the possibilities of how things would happen.
I like that a lot. Are there any crazy superheroes? Like kind of like insane superheroes?
Insane superheroes.
Yeah.
Like Deadpool would probably be fun in a zombie apocalypse.
I'm changing it. Yeah, I'm changing it to Deadpool.
He would keep you entertained at least.
Yes.
He would kill the zombies in a fun way.
And he was a little unstable, so the fact that the world has gone upside down, I think he'd be able to handle it maybe a little better.
True. Yeah, you need those ones that haven't hurt. I guess like in that fact, like Wolverine, just people that have been through a lot more.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh! But thank you so much for coming on and
Thank you.
talking to us. It's really fun to like learn about your process and how you work, and like your writing is really good, and your movies
Thanks.
are really fun to watch. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. And
I'm so glad you didn't end it the opposite way.
oh, yeah, like I'm sorry, this was so bad. Like I'm gonna have to go. No one's enjoying this.
What's wrong with you? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, just quit.
No, thank you. You're awesome. I've been a fan of yours too, so thank you very much.
Thank you.